They say a kingdom vanished in a single night, and that if you press your ear against the dunes, you can still hear her walls crumbling. This is Voices of the Forgotten, where Africa's lost kingdoms rise, not in books, but in blood, wind, and memory. 1. Wagadu, the kingdom that offered daughters to a god until one said no. The stories say Wagadu stood beneath stars that didn't blink. Her walls were wide, her people proud, and her gold endless. Once, in the days before Mali, before Songhai, long before maps had names, there was a city born from sunlight. Every grain of sand near Wagadu shimmered with hidden riches. But gold has a cost, and Wagadu's price was daughters. Each year, the high priests would climb the stone tower above the sacred cave. They would sing the ancient name, Bida, and choose a girl from noble blood. She would be bathed in perfume and silence, dressed in gold, sent into the dark. The people would turn their faces. Her screams were not to be heard, because when Bida was fed, the wealth flowed. But one year, a warrior named Mamadi Sefa Dekote broke the pact. He followed the chosen girl, sword in hand, and waited in the shadows of the shrine. When Bida rose, a serpent without eyes but full of fire, Mamadi struck, once, clean, true. And the moment the serpent's head fell, the skies closed. The rain refused to fall. The wells ran dry. Traders vanished. The gold went dull. The griots say the kingdom cracked like glass. One city sunk under the sand. Another was carried away by wind. And Wagadu, once queen of the Sahel, was buried in silence. But what they don't tell you is that some believe the serpent still lives, and every few decades, a daughter vanishes again. 2. Congo, the kingdom that prayed it wouldn't be sold. In the shadow of deep forests and screaming rivers, there rose a kingdom where kings wore iron crosses and ruled through ink, blood, and prayer. The kingdom of Congo. Founded long before the ships came, Congo stretched from forest to ocean. Its capital, Mbanza Congo, was a maze of sacred compounds and throne rooms paved in respect. And then the sails came, with fire and silk and scripture. The king at the time, Nzinga Aanku, met them with curiosity. He became a Christian, took the name Joao, but it was his son, Alfonso, who opened Congo's gates wide. Alfonso was faithful, some say too faithful. He built churches, learned Portuguese, wrote eloquent letters to the King of Portugal. One of those letters still survives. My people are being stolen. My nobles sold in secret. Please, return them. He begged, not once, but often. The Portuguese never stopped. Congo's strength faded, its noble sons taken, its warriors rebelled. And then came the Battle of Mbwila. Alfonso's heir, King Antonio I, fought the invaders with what was left. His head was taken, mounted, displayed. After that, no one could stop the bleeding. But what they didn't know was that the priests had warned Alfonso, "The cross you hold was once a sword, and it still cuts both ways. 3. Luba Empire, where wisdom was stored in beads. In the mists of Congo's forest, there once bloomed a kingdom that wrote no books, only memories. This was Luba, a kingdom ruled not solely by kings, but by initiates, memory keepers, diviners. Their power was hidden in the lukasa, sacred memory boards. Each had beads carved into specific patterns. Only trained eyes could read them. A single board could hold the history of 50 generations. Around royal fires, barefoot messengers recited bloodlines stretching back to the beginning. But one crack makes even a strong drum fall silent. In the late 1700s, succession disputes cracked the throne. Uncles, nephews, intrigue mixed with ritual. Then came the caravans. Swahili Arab slave traders noticed Luba's fracture and widened it with rifles. Civil war followed. One village turned against its twin, one brother against another. The traders took people. The sacred lukasa boards were lost. Some say burned, others buried. There is a line kept alive in song. They did not kill our kings. They killed the ones who remembered them. And that's how you erase a kingdom without swinging a single sword. 4. Great Zimbabwe, the city that refused to be believed. Deep in South Africa, where birds fly in spirals over stone, there rises a ruin, proud even in stillness. Great Zimbabwe. Built without mortar, perfectly balanced, with walls 3 stories high and towers still standing after 700 years. But when outsiders found her, they said, Africans couldn't have built this. They searched the stones for signs of Phoenicians, Romans, even Crusaders. They could not believe that black hands full of dust and sun had built a city that sent gold across oceans. They were wrong. Zimbabwe was real. Her kings wore cheetah skins and ruled with spiritual gravity. Her wealth flowed through cattle, gold, and intellect. But one day, people left. No bodies, no signs of war, just exit. What could empty a city of 18,000? A drought? A spiritual warning? A migration not recorded? Only the sacred birds, the Zimbabwe birds carved in soapstone, stayed behind. They face the horizon, not the past. Some say the kingdom was called away by ancestor spirits, just like that. And maybe, just maybe, she left before something darker arrived. 5. Zagwe, the dynasty of rock churches and silent prophecies. High in Ethiopia, above clouds that drape the mountains like royal cloth, there is a kingdom carved from stone and starlight. Zagwe, between 900 and 1270, they ruled not with empire, but with sacred architecture. Their greatest king, Lalibela, awoken from a vision. He had seen Jerusalem fall, so he carved a new one, not with bricks, but with the mountain itself. 11 churches, each chiseled from a single block of rock, each connected through tunnels hidden beneath the earth.
It's said angels helped. But even divinity can be challenged. A rival bloodline emerged, claiming descent from none other than Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. A prophecy said that line must rule. And so, the Zagwe ended. Not with fire, not with blood, but with a bow of the head and the closing of a door. The Solomonides took the throne. The Zagwe vanished into the fog they had once ruled. But those churches remain. Stone doesn't speak, but it remembers. 6. Mapungubwe, the royal hill that whispered gold secrets. Before Zimbabwe, before the Europeans wrote maps of the South, there was Mapungubwe. She rose where the Limpopo bends like an elbow. Her nobles lived on a hill above the people, in silence. Buried seated, facing east, with gold rings, ivory bangles, and one shining thing, a golden rhinoceros, small, delicately shaped, found in a grave hundreds of years later. When Mapungubwe vanished, around 1300 AD, there was no war cry, no blaze of destruction, just stillness, a leaving. Had they overfarmed the land? Had trade routes shifted? Or had a sign appeared only the elders could read? Some say the ancestors warned the king, "Turn your back and walk away." And he did. Today, we are left with bones and one tiny rhino burnished by the sun. 7. Tecro, the empire that drowned in its own faith. Before Mali, before the Sahel wore gold in its dust, there was Tecro, a kingdom born in the Senegal River Valley, fierce and early. Tecro converted to Islam as early as 1030 AD, some say with burning zeal, others say with war. King Warjabi outlawed idol worship. Shrines were destroyed, priests exiled, and in Tecro's rise, Ghana's fall began. But the fire Tecro started soon burned too hot. Internal rifts cracked the capital. New sects fought along spiritual lines. Faith became a battlefield, not a bond. Over time, Tecro sunk into the mouths of larger empires, washed away by new powers, new beliefs. Now, few remember her name. But above the Senegal River, old fishermen still pray between two gods, the one in heaven and the one in the current. 8. Oyo, the empire that outgrew its own crown. Yorubaland thundered once with hooves and drums, and Oyo was the thunder itself. With cavalry trained to ride through ash and war, and a king, the Alaafin, who lived in a palace where drums spoke news before words were formed. Oyo grew large, expanded over trade routes, forced Dahomey to pay tribute, even toyed with European merchants. But pride can become a palace too tall to enter. Internal conflict erupted. The Areona Kakanfo, commander of the army, challenged the throne. Civil war formed a crack in the crown. Slave raids, invasions, Fulani pressure from the north. In 1835, the mighty Oyoele was abandoned, stepped into silence like a drum never struck again. But if you've heard Yoruba drums in Brazil, or seen Orisha altars in Havana, then you've heard the ghost of Oyo. She may be gone, but her rhythm is immortal. But what they didn't know was that someone had already opened the shrine. Could it be the ancestors warned her before the kingdom burned? Would you offer your daughter to save your gold? or your gold to save your soul? Is faith that builds a kingdom, or the silence it leaves behind? What if none of these kingdoms truly fell? What if we are wrong to look for broken walls and not whispered names? In African cosmology, death is a journey, a shadow, a movement, never an end. What if these empires chose to disappear? What if the gods called them elsewhere, into the breeze, the soul, the story? You think they were lost to sand, but what if they became the sand? And to this day, when dust twists into spirals at sunset, the old ones say, it's not the wind you hear, it's the drums calling home a kingdom whose name you've just now remembered. If your ancestors ever told you a story like this, share it below. You might carry the final line of a forgotten book. Subscribe to Voices of the Forgotten so these stories live again.